Okay, let's jump right into this. Welcome to today's Explainer. We're going to unpack a sweeping, deeply human drama about a piece of technology that you are almost certainly wearing right now. I absolutely love diving into stories like this, where we take something incredibly ordinary, something we completely take for granted, and realize it's actually hiding thousands of years of struggle, brilliant invention, and, well, quite a bit of human eccentricity.
So do me a favor, literally right now, look down at your clothes, find a button. It can be on your shirt, maybe your jeans, or jacket hanging over your chair. Got it? What if I told you that tiny little circle holding your clothes together is actually the punchline to a 4,000-year-old mystery? It's something we use every single day without a second thought, but the story of how it got there is full of frustrated artisans, incredibly boastful kings, and literal street-fighting swordsmen. Let's see where this whole thing actually begins. Section 1. The beautiful, useless shell. Our story starts with a single, incredibly creative person just working with their hands. Picture this. It's roughly 2000 BCE. We're in the ancient, bustling city of Mohenjo-Daro, in what is now Pakistan. An artisan is sitting in a dusty, sunlit workshop. They pick up a beautifully curved shell. Carefully, deliberately, they take a tool and drill two tiny, perfectly placed holes right through the center of that shell. Then, they take a piece of thread and sew it onto a garment. This object, this shell right here, is the oldest button ever discovered by humanity. But here is the completely bizarre twist to this moment. That artisan? They didn't invent a fastener. They just invented a decoration. And this perfectly captures the massive, almost comedic irony of our story. 3,000. For the next 3,000 years, humanity wore buttons, exactly like the one that ancient artisan carved, but we never used them to actually fasten anything at all. No way, right? But it's true. What's really fascinating is how universal this blind spot was. Over those 3 millennia, brilliant people in vastly different cultures were all having the exact same idea independently. Someone in Scotland around 2000 BCE makes a button. Someone in Bronze Age China fashions one. An ancient Roman creates one. And in every single one of these civilizations, people were just stitching these buttons onto their clothing like brooches. They were tiny little ornaments meant to show off status, dangling across loose fabric with absolutely zero functional purpose. Why? Because across the entire ancient world, nobody had thought to invent the buttonhole. Without a slit in the fabric to push it through, a button could only ever just sit there and look pretty. Which brings us to Section 2, the cut that changed fashion. Let's fast forward to 13th century Europe, the 1200s. Picture a frustrated medieval tailor, completely surrounded by heavy, draped fabrics that have to be tied, pinned, or just worn super loose. There's this burning desire to make clothes fit the human form better. And then, in a moment of pure, practical genius, this unknown tailor takes a sharp blade, holds a piece of cloth, and cuts a simple slit. It sounds so incredibly small, right? But for the first time in human history, someone realized that if you pair this decorative shell with a hole, it can actually hold two pieces of clothing together. The crucial point here is this physical action directly from the tailor's perspective. Think about it. Step 1, hold the ornament. Step 2, cut a slit in the cloth. Step 3, push it through. Imagine the absolute magic of that moment for the tailor, pushing that solid object through a reinforced hole in the fabric and feeling it just lock into place. It was a complete paradigm shift in how human beings interacted with the clothes on their backs. And we still honor that exact physical action today. The very word button actually derives from a German root word that literally means to push through. So the word itself is this direct, enduring nod to the invention of the buttonhole. It's the exact moment this ancient shell and thread ornament finally got a real job to do. And the impact? Oh man, it wasn't just a minor convenience. This simple cut revolutionized the world of the tailor and the everyday wearer alike. Suddenly, you didn't have to wear loose, baggy robes. Sleeves could taper tightly to the wrist. Coats could securely hug the waist. An entirely new category of fashion, fitted clothing, was essentially born overnight, all because of a single slit in a piece of cloth.
Section 3, a dangerous fashion obsession. Because, humans being humans, once we made something useful, we immediately had to make it a way to show off. Imagine stepping into a grand palace hall from the 1300s onwards. Picture a wealthy courtier, someone whose entire social standing relies on projecting how incredibly rich they are. Now the buttons were functional, they could do two jobs at once. They held your fitted coat tightly to your body, and they signaled your bank account to everyone in the room. By the time we get to the court of King Louis XIV of France, this turns into a full-blown obsession. Nobles were literally dripping in buttons carved from solid gold, silver, ivory, and set with glowing gemstones. You could assess someone's exact status at a single glance just by counting the jewels fastening their jacket.
It actually got so intense, so deeply competitive among the wealthy elites that it became a legal issue. Governments had to step in and pass what are known as sumptuary laws. These were actual legal limits dictating exactly how many buttons a person was allowed to wear. The wealthy had taken this trend so ridiculously far that state officials and royal guards literally had to stand at the doors of court and count the buttons on a noble's chest. They literally step in and say, "Okay, buddy, that's enough buttons for you today."
Section 4. The Swordsman's Left-Sided Secret. So while the royals were fighting over gold and gemstones, out on the rougher streets, Button was adapting to a much more dangerous reality. Somewhere along the line in our history, buttons quietly split by gender. Even to this day, women's clothing typically has buttons sewn on the left side, while men's buttons are on the right. Why is that? Well, picture a swordsman walking down a dangerous cobblestone street. If he gets ambushed, he needs to draw his weapon fast. Historically, men drew weapons from their left hip using their right hand. If his coat opened right to left, his hand or the hilt of his blade could easily catch inside the flap of his coat, costing him a precious, life-saving second. By designing men's coats to button on the right side, the flap stays smooth against the drawing motion. So what we see today as just a simple, arbitrary design choice in our closets actually has this highly practical and surprisingly violent origin story.
Section 5. Fastening the modern world.
So we've talked about artisans, tailors, boastful kings, and street-fighting swordsmen. But what about the rest of us? For centuries, buttons remained a luxury item. But imagine the world in the 1830s. The Industrial Revolution is absolutely roaring. The air is filled with the clack and hum of mass production machinery. Suddenly, an everyday working-class person can walk into a bustling shop and buy clothes fastened with buttons. Machines were finally producing fabric-covered buttons on a massive scale, followed shortly by cheap glass, porcelain, and bone options. Think of the sheer joy and relief for an everyday commoner finally able to buy an affordable coat that securely hugs their body against the freezing winter cold. The working person finally got to experience the tailored fit that the wealthy had been hoarding for centuries. And that massive democratization leads us directly to the world we live in right now. Today, over 60% of the entire world's buttons are manufactured in a single place, Yongjia County, China. Just imagine the thousands of modern workers in this one county quietly carrying on the legacy of that ancient artisan back in Mohenjo-Daro. Every single day, they are creating the objects that will fasten clothing for billions of people around the globe. People who, honestly, have probably never once thought about the little object doing all that hard work. And I think this perfectly illustrates why I absolutely love exploring these source materials with you. It's such a strange, beautiful human story. An invention that was created independently by multiple ancient cultures, sat there decoratively unused for 3,000 years, and then, thanks to one frustrated tailor and a small slit in a piece of fabric, became an essential cornerstone of the modern world. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? If it took us 3,000 years just to think of cutting a hole for the button, what incredibly obvious invention, what life-changing buttonhole are we all completely blind to right now? Think about that next time you get dressed. Until next time, keep questioning the everyday things around you.